There's only one singular anime out there that I've actually sat down and watched all the way through that I can say I hate. But I don't know how, every time I express my dislike for this anime, there are people out there that are ready to defend it and say it's peak, and I just don't get it. So why don't we talk about everything I hate and like about Domestic Girlfriend? Just going through a brief description of what the hell Domestic Girlfriend is even about is probably enough to turn away most viewers with an inkling of curiosity. Basically, there's this character named Natsuo who's in love with his teacher Hina, which at the time he believes is unrequited love. So to get his mind off this crush he has on his teacher, he goes to a mixer and meets this girl Rui, and despite her being about as friendly as Rei from Evangelion, actually they kind of remind me of each other, especially with the red eyes. They end up sleeping together. The next day, it turns out that Natsuo's dad wants to get remarried, and so Natsuo agrees to meet his future mother-in-law. Well, guess what? It turns out that this woman that her dad plans to marry has two daughters, which are both the teacher and the girl he slept with. And yes, this is essentially what Domestic Girlfriend is about. It's basically, what are you doing, step bro? The anime. And part of me thinks that I wouldn't have such a problem with this concept if maybe it was more leaning into satire or even a black comedy or something, but I think the underlying issue is that it feels like the anime is taking itself way too seriously. People often say that Domestic Girlfriend is really messy, like a car crash or a dumpster fire that you can't look away from. That is very much true. And I think a frustrating part about this anime is that it feels like it's almost there when it comes to being self-aware, but doesn't quite make it. For example, one of the first arcs in the story is about how Hina is the mistress of an affair, which the other characters don't approve of. And when the characters finally come together to confront Hina and the man she's seeing, Shu Hagiwara, two of the side characters remark about how the tension is growing. This conversation continues on and ends up with Rui throwing water at the man, to which the side character says, "There it is, the iconic water splash." If they played into the idea of satirizing dramas and soap operas a little bit more, I think the anime could have been hilarious, being totally aware that it's making such degenerate choices. That's something I think that makes Ouran High School Host Club, for example, very special. It's self-awareness and willingness to make fun of the very tropes it's portraying. But Domestic Girlfriend doesn't really do that, and the issue is that when the plot starts to move forward, we basically never see this kind of funny commentary again. And, like I said before, the anime just takes itself way too seriously. By around episode 7, Natsuo's feelings for his teacher slash stepsister come to light. That sentence alone is already a lot to say out loud. But basically, Hina goes on this really dramatic speech about how if they were to move forward with this relationship, it would be basically the same as a double suicide. It's clear that Hina understands the gravity of the situation they're in with this whole speech, and clearly we are acknowledging that this relationship would be a bad idea, but my main gripe is that it's leaning too much into the idea that this relationship is forbidden in an alluring way. You know, when you watch those soap operas of people cheating and the woman's like, "No, we shouldn't do this," and the guy's like, "I don't care, I only want you." They're playing with that type of emotion but amping it up times 100, but the problem is a relationship between a student and a teacher, a minor and an adult, should not be implicated this way. If they had more scenes where the side characters make commentary about the situation by saying something like, "Bro, this is way past soap opera territory," then I'd be more okay, but instead the writing suggests that we should be allured and attracted to these developments. Not to mention, another problem I have is, why is Hina acting like the law is the only thing holding her back? Natsuo's a minor. Whatever he feels, that's forgivable. I knew people in high school that had crushes on teachers and staff all the time. It's relatively a normal thing. What's not normal is that the person who is supposed to be a responsible adult in this situation being tempted by a minor being in love with her and acting like the only reason they can't be together is the social implications of it. You shouldn't want to be with them in the first place because they're a minor that can't consent. But if that's not enough, they're your student, they're your step sibling. There are way too many dynamics here that you can't morally abide by this relationship. Hina, you are clearly an attractive person to many people in this universe. Why do you feel the need to act on these feelings with a minor? And this is probably one of the biggest problems I have with this anime. Hina is just not a redeemable character in any shape whatsoever throughout this whole thing. Right from the beginning, her first appearance shows her slapping a student's ass. That literally should tell you everything you need to know about this character. She should have been fired on the spot right there. But it doesn't really stop there, unfortunately. Even before the two of them get into an official secret relationship in the last arc of the show, Hina is just a really scummy character the entire time. When Natsuo first confronts Hina before the splashing water incident in episode 4, Natsuo gets really caught up in his emotions and kisses Hina. And while she slaps him like a whole "how dare you" gesture, she then starts to go even further and starts ripping his clothes off. And the only reason she decides not to go through more is that she says, "You still have the eyes of a child." What the hell does that even mean? He is a child. Why did you jump on top of him in the first place? I don't understand. And this happens so early on, it's so awkward that the next time they ever acknowledge any type of feelings towards each other is episode 7, where they do that whole dramatic ocean scene or whatever. I feel like that should be a pretty big elephant in the room to address, but instead the subsequent episodes try to set up this harem that I'm sure might go somewhere in the manga, but doesn't really here.
And the nerve that Hina has to visit Natsuo's mother's grave and say, please watch over us.
Why? So she can watch you do gross things to her son? And the worst part is that Hina acts like she's the victim for having these feelings for Natsuo. Yeah. Episode 8 is that classic festival episode that every romance anime has. Before the festival, Hina catches Rui kissing Natsuo, and when Natsuo later confronts Hina about it because she says she wants to move out, she basically says how she was brimming with jealousy and wasn't even concerned at all that the kiss between Rui and Natsuo could break up the family. And so one thing leads to another, they confess more feelings, yada yada yada, and this really sweet romantic song swells in the background as they hold each other. I'm sorry, am I supposed to find this cute? Am I supposed to be going awe and have butterflies in my stomach like with other romance anime? Where is that self-awareness of the soap opera type of drama that the anime was exhibiting in episode 4? The way the anime frames it basically is saying that we should be feeling positively about this relationship. Why does the anime want us to root for this relationship? By the time I got to this episode, I already thought this was a Gunnar anime already, but by this point, they start amping it up to like 11 on the scale. It was already bad enough the ending title cards were on such suggestive pictures, the fan service of the characters in their underwear, Natsuo watching Hina masturbate. Yeah, that was a thing that happened. And I'm pretty sure it gets even worse in the manga. There's even this whole episode where he has like a broken leg, so I guess Rui decides it's a good idea to bathe him, while she's naked too, no less. Natsuo's a grown man, it's a leg in a cast, not a full iron lung or something. Like, what are we doing here? Natsuo and Hina end up on top of each other like 20 times in the span of like 2 episodes at this point. It's honestly just insulting to our intelligence that the anime believes it can just throw these fan service scenes like keys dangling in front of a baby. And the fan service isn't even good because it's just reminding you of the gross relationship that's occurring in this show. Another thing that really annoys me is that there are plenty of opportunities for Hina to just stop what they're doing and move on with their lives, but she never takes any of them. There's one episode where Rui and Hina argue for a little bit during the school trip, and Rui basically gives her begrudging approval of the relationship, basically saying that even if the relationship ends right there, the feelings will still remain, with Hina being so relieved afterward. First of all, Hina, why are you taking validation from your little sister that's also a minor? Why is it so hard to just not be in a relationship with a minor? And every single time I think to myself that maybe, just maybe, Hina will have some sort of redemption and finally end the relationship. She just makes the complete worst decision every time. In the penultimate episode, Natsuo wants to take things to the next level, while Hina says that there's no point to the relationship and should end things because of how taboo it is. Yes! Thank you, Hina. You're finally making a good, responsible decision for yourself as an adult should. Yeah, that's not what happens. Basically, Natsuo says, don't use our age or our relation as a reason to tank what we've got. And at this point, Hina has a conviction of like wet toilet paper because that's enough to convince her, and she just goes, okay, never mind. And I think you know what happens next. The Gunners win again, unfortunately, in this episode. It angers me so much that the only reason that this relationship doesn't continue is because they got caught from a picture taken of their hotel window. For Natsuo, I can understand this being a heartbreaking experience. He's a minor. He doesn't know any better. Hina 1000% should have known better, had every opportunity to move past this, but just kept getting reeled back in with the most weak arguments. Hina honestly should have gone to jail. So in the end, she moves away to another district and agrees to never contact Natsuo again so that this doesn't appear on her record and she doesn't, go to jail. But again, the anime frames this as like a bittersweet ending, as she looks out into the distance from her new life in the new home, with Natsuo's story that he ends up writing based on his experience and heartbreak of Hina leaving so suddenly on her shelf. And you know what the craziest part is? Would you believe me if I said this isn't the only student-teacher relationship that happens in this anime? Remember that guy Shu earlier that was having an affair with Hina? Yeah, he used to be her teacher back in the day. Oh, and of course this guy's got a friend that works at the school as a teacher too, Kiria. It seems to be heavily implied that he and another character, Miu, got a little bit of something going on. Kiria-sensei also happens to be the subject of the rumors that he was transferred to Natsuo's school because he had a relationship with a student where he previously worked. The way that he's up close to Miu in multiple situations, and even how she approaches him at the beach in her bikini. Honestly, I'd be more surprised if the rumors weren't true at this point. What is up with the teachers in this universe? Like, does no one do a background check on these people? Like, come on! I will admit, sometimes I do feel kind of bad about bagging on domestic girlfriends so much, especially because it seems like the author, Sasuga Kei, is very involved with the fandom, at least on Twitter, to the point where she wrote about the criticism she had been receiving from overseas readers. In a series of tweets, she had said, I've been receiving an overwhelming amount of jocular insults, criticisms, and prolonged harassment from overseas Twitter users, and it's been a bit rough. Thank you for all the supportive comments, it really does lift my spirits. Regarding the criticism, I've been getting the impression that for a lot of people, the feelings and the attitudes of the characters were not fully conveyed, so I've been thinking of adding a bit of explanation to the tankobon, although I don't think the people who are complaining will buy it. The quick results from the magazine's reader survey were positive, so I'm not really hurt, but when I block accounts that I feel are a bit mean, a new account comes at me. It's been feeling like blocking is useless, so whenever I tweet, I brace myself for ridiculing replies. As per the advice I'd received from various people, I think I'll refrain from looking at the comments of anything except for announcements. I will keep updating my Pixiv though. I'm truly happy about all the support I've received from around the world. Thank you so much. Now, let's get one thing straight. I don't think that harassing anyone is ever okay, especially when at the end of the day, we're just dealing with works of fiction and real people. Criticizing works, I think, is a very important part of media culture. I think it's absolutely beautiful that we can come together and share our thoughts, opinions, and analytics on things that we watch together. But if we're going out and just harassing the creator, I feel like that's not really productive. So, to clarify, I don't mean any malicious intent when I criticize Sasuga K's work, but I think it's important to acknowledge when we see flaws and problems too. And if you guys follow my content at all, you know that I'm the type of person that likes to research, read interviews, and discover the author's intent. I got into anime content creation pretty late, and usually the content creators I watch are more in the realm of film and video game reviewers, so I was very surprised to see that a fellow YouTuber, Giguk, had actually gotten the chance to interview Sasuga K. Good for you, man, that's really incredible. In the interview, she mentioned how dramas that were popular during the 80s in Japan were popular because of the rapid story developments that took place, and that overseas shows like Game of Thrones and The Mandalorian were to her enjoyment as well. That pretty much confirms what we discussed earlier, that the soap opera vibe and pacing we're feeling is definitely intentional, along with Game of Thrones, which is known for its controversial relationships being mentioned, makes too much sense, honestly. Another thing I was interested in when reading on the author is how she would try to better clear up her feelings and attitudes towards the characters in the tankobon volumes, as per the tweet I cited earlier. During my research for authors' comments from the tankobon online, the afterword from volume 1 I believe had the most insight. While watching various movies and dramas in order to gather references for my second series, again, the Game of Thrones and Japanese dramas making a little bit too much sense, I came to the realization that I absolutely adore Forbidden Love. I think that when it comes to works of art, unless the creator is excited while drawing, the passion behind the piece won't be conveyed to the viewer. As such, this work became jam-packed with taboo elements. Just as watching a good drama will make my heart race, I hope reading this story filled you with excitement and anticipation as well. Okay, so there's a lot of thoughts that come to mind when reading this. I will admit, I definitely get what she means by the passion behind the work being conveyed to the viewer. Like how many people describe Domestic Girlfriend, it's a dumpster fire you can't look away from. And completely disregarding the problematic nature of the subject material, I think she does a good job writing. Like she said, those rapid story developments you find in dramas and shows like Game of Thrones keep the viewer hooked with anticipation for what will happen next. And Sasuga K executes that perfectly. I definitely can't say that I was bored while watching Domestic Girlfriend, even if I don't agree with the subject material. Combined with the taboo nature, it perfectly encompasses how people describe the show as a giant dumpster fire or a big car crash on the side of the highway. It's definitely not the prettiest sight, but nonetheless, you can't look away. For example, when the penultimate episode ends with Hina being shown the photo with Natsuo, I did let out an audible gasp. Granted, my feelings were more about, oh my god, she finally got caught, even though I feel like the purpose was to convey, oh no, what are they gonna do now? And whenever the plot develops between Natsuo and its two step-siblings, I get frustrated, sure, but I can't deny that the way the story produces its drama is really well done. Besides the moment that Hina gets caught by the administration, the other moment I think that has the most tension is when Rui catches Natsuo at Hina's apartment. Just the slow development of Natsuo being caught up in a lie to the look of horror on both Natsuo and Hina's face when they get caught is the perfect satisfaction to this tense moment. Purely in terms of the actual mechanics of storytelling, I think that Sasuga K has talent, it's just that it's being wasted on such terrible subject matter. Regardless, the story moves forward in a way that you want to see how the dumpster fire inevitably burns down the whole town. The author promises suspense, drama, and anticipation, and she delivers. Granted, my feelings are more in the realm of things can't possibly get any worse, and then they do, but you definitely can't say that Domestic Girlfriend is dull by any stretch of the imagination. The problem is that the author seems excited about the taboo elements and that the viewer is supposed to be excited with her, but I just can't help but feel grossed out instead. Interestingly, when it comes to everything that's not related to teacher-student or step-sibling relationships, I actually think there's a decent amount of good things about the anime. The character Momo is probably one of my favorites. In the episode she's introduced, she's conveyed by her peers as someone that's easy with men. But underneath that exterior, she suffers from depression riddled with self-harm and neglectful parents. And I do admire that Natsuo as a character shows a lot of empathy for Momo, which in turn makes her like him even more. I actually would have liked it if she was endgame, but as far as I'm told in the manga, that definitely doesn't happen. Another character I really enjoy is Masaki. He's a character that loves the drama that the characters go through, but is also kind-hearted and provides his own guidance and wants nothing more than for conflict to be resolved, even if he enjoys the show along the way. I talked about this in a short before, but the fact that he's voiced by Kenjiro Suda, who's usually known for his iconic deep voice when playing characters like Nanami and Kishibe, switching to a flamboyant, lively performance was absolutely a treat and surprise to watch. I didn't even realize it was Kenjiro Suda until you learned that Masaki was a Yakuza boss back in the day, which is when he switches to that iconic deep voice in the first place. On top of that, having a character being openly gay is a nice plus when they're not just the subject of jokes and ridicule, but actually play a part in the story and being really funny with it along the way. The parents are also really great characters, and evidently, I just feel sorry for them as innocent bystanders. I'm just gonna say it, these are two of the most noble characters in the whole series, but especially Natsuo's dad. Natsuo's dad asks Natsuo for his approval before asking to marry Hina's mom. He's there as a great source of moral support when Natsuo's mom passes away, as we see in some flashbacks, and he's overall just a really kind-hearted guy that I would never wish anything negative on him in his entire life. Dude, as far as anime parents go, I know we often talk about the bad ones, but this is one of the greatest anime dads of all time. In an anime where some wild shenanigans go on, we surprisingly have an extremely emotionally mature father figure. He tells Natsuo things like it's okay to cry today when they're at Natsuo's mom's funeral, and constantly emphasizes to come talk and communicate with him if something is ever wrong. Even in the end, when the two parents find out that Hina is leaving because of what happened between her and Natsuo, all they do is question whether or not they should have gotten together in the first place. I'm actually genuinely impressed that Natsuo's dad doesn't get disgusted or outraged by Hina's actions towards his son. Hina definitely does not deserve these parents, and I feel really bad that they probably need to go through years and years of therapy just to get through this situation. You happy, Hina? Clearly you're the one that needed therapy and you made it everyone else's problem instead. One last thing we absolutely cannot ignore when we're thinking about good things to talk about the anime is the opening theme. Don't get me wrong, a lot of the music and the ending theme are also really good, but it's almost like a meme how good this opening song is. You guys know how YouTube is. If I play even like 2 seconds of this song, I'm gonna get copyright flagged for sure, so I'll just leave a link to the opening in the description so you guys can know exactly what I'm talking about. I've heard it from many people before and I'll say it again. It really was a shame that this song got wasted on an anime with a premise like Domestic Girlfriend. So in the end, where does that leave us with Domestic Girlfriend? There's certainly a lot of good things about it, and one very particularly bad thing about it. Even with understanding the author's intent of having fun writing taboo romances, I think the problem for many of us is that it almost glorifies the relationship in a way. The way the story is framed, yes, it does acknowledge that the relationship is taboo, but it also plays out like a tragedy that they couldn't get together in the end. It also gives way too many excuses to the character Hina, who should have the most agency as an adult to be able to end the relationship and move on with their life, but instead gets reeled back in by a kid who says don't let age be a deciding factor. Now, I absolutely understand that there's an argument that it's fiction and people can differentiate between that and reality. There's certainly quite a lot of nuance between what is problematic versus letting the reader explore certain themes and ideas within the safety of fiction. But I personally believe that fiction has a heavy impact on reality, whether intentional or not, and so depicting problematic issues without confirming explicitly in the work that it's something we shouldn't be rooting for, while also relying on the audience to make the distinction between fiction and reality, is very irresponsible, especially with the ongoing crisis of lack of media literacy today. As for Domestic Girlfriend, I think the problem is that while the topic at hand is acknowledged as taboo, it's depicted as exciting rather than disturbing and predatory. At the same time, even if there was something beneficial to gain out of this story, I don't know if the intended audience is the appropriate one to have faith that they have the maturity to make these kinds of distinctions and decisions. Did you know that this manga actually got released in Weekly Shonen magazine of all things? You're telling me that young boys could buy these chapters at the convenience store and read them without any parental supervision? This is the same magazine that has works like Blue Lock, Hajime no Ippo, and To Your Eternity in it. What were they thinking? And so what exactly are we teaching these kids when they read it? That if they're the ones that want the relationship with an adult, then it's okay and that society is what's preventing them from being together? Are we supposed to encourage these highly inappropriate relationships as long as the woman is attractive? When you go and buy the Tankobon volumes, it's even worse. They just have their tatas hanging out for the whole world to see. And even when looking at the art in the manga, I don't know, man. It kind of just makes me uncomfortable how much these characters, who are often minors, are put into these physical positions. And so when looking at this anime, there seems to be no actual intention of depth, but rather just to be appealing to the gooners. I just personally can't get behind the idea that in an anime we're exploring the inappropriate relationship between a minor and their teacher, and that the main intention of the work is to be sexually gratifying in some way. If you think Domestic Girlfriend is peak, fine, that's your opinion. But I'm going to continue to believe that it has a lot of problematic material in it, and that Sasagake's talents will would be way better off writing something else, because she certainly has ability. Thank you so much guys for watching this video. Hopefully by the time it comes out it's not 2026, that'll be a darn shame. If you enjoyed the video, be sure to like, subscribe, and hit the bell icon to see when more videos come out. Do you think there's an anime that's worse than Domestic Girlfriend, or is it actually one of your favorites? Leave a comment down below. Is there other anime you'd like to see me review? Ask away, and hopefully I'll see you guys real soon.